So welcome to the end game. Last hour of the conference. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and hopefully you will enjoy my talk as well. So before I go on and ramble on about AGGrid and Angular and how we can prototype data UI quite fast, I'm going to just quickly introduce myself. So I'm Thomas Horvath. I'm a lead front-end developer and somewhat of a speaker whenever I get a chance. And I'm from Dublin, Ireland. And if you are interested, please do follow me on Twitter. It's @criticalpix. I do like to have followers who I barely interact with. It does make me feel better about myself. So why am I talking about a grid? Hold on one sec. This is not going to work. There we go. Why am I talking about a grid? Well, there's a story there. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you about it. So whenever I get to know a new framework or a library, it's a little bit of a struggle at the beginning and a lot of cursing. Well, it's because the API, the documentation might be lacking, or you run into a lot of errors and bugs and troubleshooting issues. But eventually, once upon a time, you come across something that's really good. And you start to really like it and really enjoy it. Maybe even love it. And so much that you actually want to talk about it. And that's the case today. I really, guys, want to talk to you about AGGrid. And if you ever do end up working with a data-heavy UI application, definitely use AGGrid. It will save you a lot of trouble in the future. So, what makes a good grid a good grid? So, I went through a lot of grids, and I came up with these 3 factors: usability, features, and performance. A grid has to kind of fit into your current stack. If it's too hard to implement, there's no point wasting your time. Of course, it has to have a lot of features as well. There's no point going around coding your own custom features if it already exists. And of course, if you load loads of data into it, it can take 2-3 minutes to load. So it has to be fast. So obviously, there's a lot of options out there. There's Hypergrid, SlickGrid, even jQuery data tables. But all of them are great, but they're lacking 1 or 2 features or 1 or 2 performance problems. They might have, there's something about them that isn't right. However, there is AGGrid. And maybe it's a lie, maybe it's not, but it is the best JavaScript HTML grid out there. And the reason for it is it just works out of the box with most frameworks. If you're working with just plain vanilla JavaScript, Angular, React, Vue, dead frameworks like Ember, it works. So we have usability, features, and performance. So what's so special about AGGrid? Well, it has a lot of features. It can do server-side operations, tree data, customization, lazy loading, live stream data, filtering, sorting, aggregation, pivoting, grouping, so much. And of course, it's very performant as well. Now, I've rambled on about AGGrid a good bit, but where the heck does Angular come in? Well, rather than showing you 50 slides, I'm going to stop showing you slides and go into like a live demo. But before I do go into a live demo, I just want to talk to you about how Angular comes into this. So AGGrid provides a wrapper for Angular, so we can just straight away get started out of the box. So what I like to do is live code Angular and AGGrid application from scratch in about 3 minutes. I'm not sure if that's possible, but we'll see. Maybe I practiced, maybe I didn't, who knows. So the reason it works well with Angular is because it's familiar code structure, there's nearly no overboarding overhead, and it's a flawless integration, which you will see in a second. So what we'll do is we will build this. We'll have an Angular component and an Angular template, so HTML. And inside the HTML, we'll have an Angular AGGrid Angular HTML tag. And we will not connect the server, but we'll just pretend that there's a server. And we'll request data, save a variable, set up grid columns, so we have actually some columns, and set up some grid options later on. So initial setup, you've seen this slide many times everywhere. Excuse me. I knew I had to get a laugh in, so npm install and you're good to go. I woke you up, didn't I? That's perfect. Okay. On my own expense. So let's fire it up and let's bring Angular into it. Okay. By the way, before I start, everyone has a phone, right? Hands up if you do have a phone. And hands up if you have internet on the phone. Okay, a few. Well, we'll see how it goes. All right. One sec. There we go. So what I have here is can you guys see first of all? Can you guys see the code? Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna just hide this. I don't really need this. And I don't really need this either. There we go. So what we have is an Angular module, a component file, a HTML file, and a style sheet, and a cheat sheet. Ignore that. So so let's just test it and say hello, front and con. Save it. Let's go into our AngularJS talk, and we can see hello world, hello front and con. There we go. So what we're gonna do is import AngularGrid. We already installed, npm installed everything. I wouldn't do it live because it takes forever, and 3G connection is not great for it. So I'm just gonna import AngularGrid module, and with that I'm gonna create a method called with components, and I'm gonna pass in an empty array. That array is used for custom components if we're gonna do custom cell rendering or custom filtering or whatever we need. So that's our importing done. Next on, I'm gonna move on to my component. So what does a grid need? It needs columns and it needs data. So we're gonna just create two variables called call definition, and that's gonna be an array. And we also need some data, so row data. And again, it's just gonna be an array. Now they're quite empty now, and there's no point me just typing out data grid data. So I'm just gonna go to my cheat sheet, grab some column definitions for you guys, and some data. There we go. And I'm gonna save this. So now I have some columns and some data. Perfect. So what I need to do now is get rid of this text and actually use a template tag. So the template tag is called AngularGrid Angular. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly grab this, wrap this in a div tag, because I want to make things cool looking. It's just some CSS. And what we're going to do is pass a class to our grid and call it ag-team-ham. Now you could use anything. You could use material, bootstrap. It comes loaded in with a lot of themes, but this one's my favorite. I'll need some style as well. So width, height, all that kind of good stuff. Oh, there we go. And now what do we need to do? We need to pass the columns definitions we made and some data. So let's do that. Call definitions. And the variable was called call_def, as well as some data. Row data. Perfect. So we've imported our module. We've created some data and some column definitions. We added our HTML. Now we're missing one thing, style sheet. So I'm just going to quickly import that too. No point typing that up. That would take me forever. And we're good to go. So 4 things, and we should, if I go back to my localhost, see something on the screen. Here's me praying to the demo lords that it will work. There we go, and it did not. Hold on. There we go, that should work. No, it is the height problem. Or not. I've tested this like multiple times. No, that shouldn't be an issue. One sec. Or maybe it is. Well, that's awkward. So what I'm going to do, literally, git checkout, start dash finish, and just serve. Git checkout. Oh yeah, git stash, git reset, git checkout. There we go. Literally the same code. I mean, come on. Ridiculous. Oh, now I see where the error was. That's a miserable thing, but that's okay. So while it's compiling, I hope you've enjoyed that bug. So next time you guys see a bug, and first person to actually see a bug, there's a 50 thingy of your own currency, guys. It's all up for grabs. It's next time we see a bug. So there we go. So let's go back to localhost this time, and now we have a table. Perfect. So it wasn't 3 minutes. It was two. It was like 5 minutes, but it does the job. So the idea is that it's very easy to set up. Just import the node module, set up your data and column definitions, and mess around with the HTML a bit, and we're good to go. Now, it does take only 3 minutes to set up. But we now have data, but we can't really do much with it. So what we're going to do is take this data and we're going to take this grid and actually extend it and actually make something useful out of it. But before I do that, I'm just going to talk to you about a bit more about the features that we're going to use. So I'm just going to play this real quick. There we go. So this works. So yeah, so that was a cool table. Obviously, it didn't work at the beginning, but it does work now. So let's explore some features that AGGrid provides us with. We can do cell editing with AGGrid, which comes right out of the box, as well as filtering, sorting, which we're going to just try out in a second, as well as row grouping, which is a premium feature, but you don't necessarily need it. But I want to just show you how cool it is in a second. And also cell rendering. So if you do have custom cells and you want to put your own custom code into them, you can use Angular components or React components and just stick them in there. And of course, it's fully customizable as well. You can use any theme you want. You can create your own with SCSS variables. I mean, the options are crazy. I mean, if you don't believe me, have a look at the screen. There's a ton of features out there. I don't think that you'll be feature short whenever you use AGGrid. So let's actually prototype something really fast. Maybe faster than last time, because last time there was a bug. So let's make some use out of some data. Yeah, let's do that. So let's go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and git stash this. Good shit. Finish start. Oh, come on. You're messing with me. That's the nerves. That's the problem. Oh, of course. Check out final start. There we go. Okay, perfect. So it's pretty much the same. So we have a module, we have a component, a HTML file, and some style. Now, I've already imported these things, so I don't have to do it again. But this time, instead of grabbing and copy-pasting some data, we're going to use a large data set. But to do that, I need to use a HTTP module to import some data. So I'm going to just quickly get the HTTP client module in. Perfect. That's all my importing now for now. Actually, no, I'm going to use my create license key for a second, in case I'm going to show you some premium features. Don't take a screenshot. And now what we need to do is make some data, get some data. So I have a row data variable, and I have a column def variable. And we can pass them into our HTML, but instead of doing that, we're going to do something else. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what's going to happen first. So when we initialize our application, first thing we want to do is we want to get some data. So we're going to use this get data. After we get some data, we're going to initialize our column definitions again. So we're going to set call def. And after we define our column definitions, we're going to set some grid options. And this is where the features of AGGrid come into place. And you can see how fast we can add extra features on top of our grid. So this set grid options. So obviously, we're going to make these functions. But before I make these options, I just need one more variable here called grid options. And that's going to be an interface of grid options. We're going to just quickly import that there. Perfect. So let's write our function. So get data is going to be as simple as setting the row data variable to an observable. So this HTTP, oh, we're missing HTTP, right? So private HTTP client. There we go. So HTTP will work now. We're going to get. Imagine this is a server. Very cool server. So we're going to use Olympic winners. It's a lot of data. JSON. So now we have an observable which we can use. So next function we need is set in our column definitions. So let's do that. We're going to set call def. And what we're going to do is literally set the call def variable to an array again, and go to our cheat sheet again, and grab some fields. There we go. So now we can kind of slowly start to see what kind of a data table I'm building. And last but not least, we need to set some grid options. This is where the features come in. So set grid options. No, that you can have that. No, you can't. You're right. No, well, you can. All right. So let's set some grid options. Same thing again. We have a variable. We're going to grab that variable and set it to something. So this time it's not an array. It's an object, and we have an array here called column definitions. So grid options has a lot of objects inside of which we can use. So one of them is call definitions. Column definitions. There we go. And we're just going to set this to call defs. There we go. So now what we have is when our application will initialize, we're going to get some data, set our column definitions, and then set some grid options. So we're going to go to our HTML. I'm not going to mess with the style again, because that's what screwed up the rest of it. And we're going to set some row data. And this time I do have to use an async pipe, because we're using an observable as data service. Next thing we want to do is set some grid options, which contains our column definitions already. So now that's all I need. So if I save this, pray for the demigods, and go back to my localhost and refresh it. Yes. Wouldn't that be a good thing? There we go. Let's start a server. So what we have is, again, a simple setup. We didn't do much more different. We didn't do anything really differently. We just set up the column definitions in a different object, which can have more options in it. That's pretty much it. And instead of having small data, we now have a large data set. There we go. So now we have a large data set of data. As you can see, now we have like silver, bronze, total, gold, and so on. But that's not really useful to us yet. We can't really do much with this data. So how about we add some features to the grid and see how much we can push it with the next few seconds. So I'm going to go to my app component and add some features. So first feature I want to do is I want to actually filter through the data. So I'm just going to type in enable filter and set it to true. Same with enable sorting and set it to true. Now, if I want to have a specific filter, I just go back to my column definitions and add a filter. And if it's a text filter, so it's AG text column filter. I hope this works. And I'm going to double check. There we go. And that's a number. There we go. So now we have two filters. We have a text and a number filter. And we've enabled sorting and filtering. So let's see what happens when we refresh. There we go. Oh yeah, and one more thing. I'm going to enable a floating filter as well. So we can actually see it straight away. There we go. So if you go back, now we have floating filters everywhere. But the only ones that are actually enabled are age and athlete. So now if I start searching for, let's say we search for Thomas. Now we have Thomas. If I look for age, let's say 22, there's two people which contains the name Thomas and are in age of 22. So now we have a large data set, and with little or no work, we now can actually comb through the data really fast. But that's all cool, but can we do something else? Yeah, of course we can. So let's add some extra features. How about we take these columns and add grouping to it? I'm just going to double check my spelling is correct. Clearly, spelling is not my forte today. True. So now we've enabled row grouping on a few columns. And I'm going to add a few more features, for example, animation. Maybe a few more. Let's say, yeah, that'll do. So if you refresh, our grid is suddenly quite the something. There's a lot of things going on. We've got a side panel with filters and columns. Now we can quickly go through it and type in Thomas here, and it will filter our data. Great. We can also hide and show columns very quickly. And as you can see, the animation function is working straight away. And of course, one of the coolest features, I believe, is the grouping. So how about, it's still a large data set. So how about we take and group countries together by dragging the country up on our bar, and then now we have our grid sorted up by country. But that's okay. Well, can we do something else? Yeah, of course. Let's group it by year. Oh, my bad. So country, year, athlete. So now if you open up the United States, we can see in 2008, these athletes were present and they were doing these and these things. So how about we add one more in and then switch it around here. So grab it here and switch it there. And if you go to United States now, it's dividing it up by, oh, it's not sport. There we go. By the sport they did. So swimming, Michael Phelps, 3 years, he did it in 3 years, and there's a name and age and everything else. And of course we can comb through this data as well. So we can just type in a name. And it will work. There we go. Athlete. Name, let's say Thomas. So there was 2 Thomases in the United States. We're doing snowboarding in 2002. So now we can comb through the data really fast. So all it took was a few booleans, extra few variables, and a little no time, and we suddenly have a grid that we can use for an enterprise application. Let's go back to the presentation for 2 seconds. So what we just did, we prototyped the application really fast. But let's go beyond the application and actually build something else. I do have 8 minutes, so it's perfect. Let's do that. There we go. Clickety click. So let's go beyond and actually build an application. Let's build an application for Frontend Con. Is it playing automatically? Yes, it is playing automatically. I don't have to do anything. So let's build. No, it's going to go too fast. That's actually not. So let's use Firebase. It's going to work. Yes, it is. Okay, there we go. So what we're going to do is use Firebase as our database. We're going to build an Angular service, and we're going to use the same system we just used a second ago. We're going to have an Angular route, and inside that route, we're going to have a view. Inside that view, we're going to have our HTML template, which is going to be the AG grid template. And we're going to have a grid service, which is going to contain all our grid options, all our grid columns, and the data. Now, because we're using Firestore, our data is going to be in real time. So before we give the data to the grid, we're going to do some playing around with the data and modify it to fit us. So that's what the data grid, data handler is for. So before, yeah, okay, hold on. That's what I need the phones for. So let me just show you what that looks like. So I'm actually not going to fully code this one because that would be a lot of work. I'm pasting and type. There we go. Git stash. This time git checkout master. Perfect. So if you look here, if I go to this folder, you will see very similar things. We have our HTML, which contains, again, row data, grid options. That's it. Nothing special. We have our app component, which, again, sets column definitions, sets the grid options, and then gets real-time data updates. Same similar system, same setup. Now, our column definitions are a bit more complicated this time. As you can see, we have a cell renderer this time. This is what I was talking about earlier on. If you want to have your own custom cell renderer, you just import it in your app module and pass, oh yeah, not there, in admin module this time, and just pass it in as a component within your with component method. So in my application, no, hold on, it's too many files. Let's close them up. Don't need that. Don't need that. There we go. So as you can see, there were cell renderers, and we're also using different cell renderers, for example, to animate numbers or letters. Of course, my grid options looks a bit busier this time. Now we're using framework components. This is the image cell we're using, and of course we're using animation, row selection, and we're also using a method here. Whenever the grid is ready, go ahead and get some data. And what that's going to do is going to go get some data for us, which is the Firebase data. If we go have a look at this method here, it's literally going to Firebase, grabbing all the speakers, and then going to display our data. So all this is doing is just modifying the data. It's basically spitting it out whenever there's an update. That's it. This is nothing too complicated, but I won't get into it because we have 4 minutes left. So what does that look like? Let's have a look. First of all, I should run the application. There we go. So while that's running, I'm going to go back to localhost and wait a few seconds. So all this, again, is just a simple grid, but this time we're using Firebase for our data source. So if I refresh, we now have an application, which I'm going to get you to check out in a second. I'm just going to go to the admin section. There we go. So this is our grid now. As you can see, there's an image now, which we use to custom render our component. So instead of having just a text, now we can have an image. And now we can see, what you can see here, guys, is average rating and total ratings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set average rating to go from the highest to the lowest. And now, guys, I'm going to get you to take your phones out, if you will. Be your hero for me. And take your phones out and go to this link here. We do have trim. There's plenty. There we go. Be your hero. Help me out. Hopefully we won't crash this now. This is the problem with doing live demos. When something goes wrong, that's it. So what you should see, guys, is as a mobile application, and you should see all just for those who don't actually have a phone. I'm just gonna. That's plenty of time for a link, right? Yeah, I hope so. So what you guys will see is a mobile application, something like this. Oh, there we go. So guys, keep rating, and what you will see in a second is, and start derating people as well. Don't rate everyone 10 or whatever. Rate someone 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. It's not real ratings. So as you can see now, there's a lot of changes happening constantly. There we go. Now, I want to see my name on top, guys. Where am I? Ah, not bad. So now if I change the total ratings from how many people rate, oh, Damien's doing really well with someone. Vue.js. What are you doing here? What are you doing there? What are you doing here? 45, Jesus, nice. So that's real-time data in a grid, and all it took was setting up a few variables. I invite you now to stop using the application and go on to the real application provided to you by Frontend Con, and go ahead and rate the actual speakers who you saw over the last 2 days. I hope you really enjoyed the conference so far, and I hope you do, guys, give everyone a good rating, whoever you saw speaking, including me. So hashtag self-promotion. So that's about it. Before I finish up, I have a slight second left, so I'm just gonna quickly show you the summary, just so to summarize things up. AG Grid, multitude of features, 0 dependencies, powerful performance. As you seen a second ago, there was about 70 connections there. Fast setup, and it's fully customizable. And the best thing of it all, you can take a picture of this if you want to actually use AG Grid by yourself, or just go to AG Grid. I'm just going to do a pose if you want to take a picture. There we go. And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it.